So it becomes very complicated. It's very easy to get self-congratulatory, but I think the more interesting stuff is to just let's take that for granted and see what else we can come up with.
A couple other folks.
I'm wondering what some examples of how art is translated into action, maybe from some of your personal experiences. In terms of like art as a medium to portray sustainability or the idea or the awareness of sustainability,
to achieve it.
And how has that been translated across to maybe encouraging other people to act in ways that are sustainable, or even.
I don't have an example, but I was having the same thought that you did. I'm an engineer, so art is about as foreign to me as something can be. But I'm thinking...
You got to write brain somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere. It's just really small right over here.
You got it right.
It's like a crescent moon. But I think that I love going to the art museum, and I think that part of it is the enjoyment of seeing something beautiful. But I think it's also important for artists. I think that you can change people's behavior with art. And I think that it's something that's relevant. First, it's attractive and it draws someone in. Like I was drawn in by seeing the pictures of the plastic, the shredded plastic in the other room that had an attractiveness to me. And it has to be relevant, and then it also has to be something that's attainable. That the person looks at and say, wow, I understand that, it means something to me, and maybe I can do something about it. Or get involved to help advance some cause.
I think art has a really important role also in making things visible and in cultivating literacy. I mean, think about stained glass windows in pre-literate European culture when Christianity was trying to teach really complex theological doodah to people that couldn't read. And you'd see the pictures and you'd learn the stories and you'd remember the stories. And that same kind of teaching using glyphs and symbols has been done by Mayan cultures and other kind of indigenous cultures. And what I started thinking about that when you were talking, Bob, was when women's art got to be a thing, and they'd have women's art shows, or let's have a show about breast cancer awareness and women, in which there might be, there's clearly some things to be communicated there, and there's clearly some meaning, perhaps to a segment of audience, but when I go to a show like that, I usually do see something that really moves me or speaks to me and hopefully communicates to me what the message is that's coming out of that thing. Ditto for seeing the faces of kids that are in a program where they get cameras and they get to, they get to communicate what they see about their community and about themselves. And to me, sustainability is a level of literacy that our species has a huge learning curve and a critical need to develop in the same way that we have literacy about tolerance to more or less of a degree, that we have it about wellness, that we have it about safety. We're learning the language and we're learning the rules from the planet, and we need those rules, we need that language in order to be able to apply it in our daily lives. It's grossly lacking from our vernacular. And I think art makes that kind of thing visible and has a way of doing it that can engage you in both parts of your brain, and especially when the subject matter is painful, can engage you in a way that you can bear to be engaged, and that's really important.
It's always so funny because I'm often the artist on the panel who's the most skeptical, right, of art. It's usually the people, it's fascinating, but it's a role I kind of enjoy playing, right? But obviously, if I didn't believe it, I would be doing it. Right? But it's interesting. I think the piece that really got me in show today is yours, because the piece is all about that gap that we're trying to bridge. Right? Here's, did you know his piece up there? It's all of this sustainability ideas.
It's on the second floor, and it's a big long table with a bunch of photo collage magazines.
Yeah, and articles on top of it that talk about people's hostility and indifference to those issues to some extent. And that's a...
Yeah, and the goal was not to be negative. It was establishing a level of communication, the baseline of some of the discourse that takes place in our region about the issue. And you know, in any town, in any paper, if you go online and you look at the anonymous reader comments, you're going to find all the vitriol you'd ever want to find. But to throw that on the table from really both sides of the political spectrum are represented up there about that is just to say, here's where we are. These are people who aren't in the art choir. They're not in the green choir. And you know, so it's just kind of the way it is. And so if we're going to do an energy analysis on a building or a campus, we want to find the baseline. So relative to the level of literacy we need to change, you know, the motivation for it was, let's communicate, make sure everybody understands the baseline of where things are at here, and just work with everybody to sort of help change it, to understand it, and to have projects come out of it to be meaningful in some way.
Can I chime in?
Do it. Go for it.
Well, I really think that artists are the ultimate champions of sustainability. And just our local example of our champion that we just lost, Bob Castley. You know, I mean, who knows if we'd even have a downtown now if it hadn't been for Bob Castley and creating the City Museum as an anchor and putting St. Louis back on the map and having us value cities and salvaging pieces of what we'd already lost. And I visited Rocky Mountain Institute where Hunter and Amory Levin's got their start, and it's a beautiful place. I'm very inspired by it, and you know, my background before getting into community development was as a restoration carpenter for years, and I've just fallen in love with the buildings around St. Louis, and I think there's something about that, you know, that when we make this human connection to the built environment that touches us at some level other than just the utilitarian. You know, we're more apt to care for those buildings and keep them around. You know, I've become intimate with the buildings that are the existing buildings that are going to be part of the EcoVillage, and you know, I just still, when I look at those, if you just drive by, they still look like just another row of boarded up old buildings, but if you look closely, you know, the quality of the brickwork and stuff, you just don't see it on the newer buildings. You know, every brick is just right in, laid in there just perfectly through the whole face of the building, and complete those buildings after 110 years are perfectly plumb. You know, I mean, it's just amazing, and I think that's part of what it's going to take to really have a sustainable environment, is that we have to, like Bob says, we have to have a sustainable culture. And the biggest one that I think that we've really left out, where we really do have this two-legged stool that just keeps falling over, I mean, you know, is the economic piece. You know, I mean, the system is broken, and we've been working with somebody that's come up with some real innovations in finance, based on what community values are, the things that we really value, custom and culture, knowledge, well-being, and so he's created this. The guy's name's Dr. David Martin. He has this company called MCAM, he's created this 6-point system that includes those, also includes money and technology and commodity. But until we start to value all of it, you know, and especially the things that that we, you know, we need to, first of all, we need to just feel good about our lives to accomplish anything. And art and culture is what makes us feel good and makes us want to get up the next day, whether we realize it or not, you know.
You know, it's interesting, to kind of almost flip on myself here, because I like to do that, right? My students they don't know what I believe about anything, right? One thing I've noticed with the arts, when we work with the kids' projects, is that it takes on a metaphorical quality for them. And what I mean by that is they will come to me, and they've actually initiated this conversation later. They said, you know, the way you taught us to work on this thing and just keep trying, and it took forever to do it, and blah, blah, blah. They said, you know, we've applied those lessons of the parts in our lives. So we now, when we look at a problem, we say, okay, now there's a way I can just break this problem down into little things that I can manage, right? And kind of, you know, I can get some control over it piece by piece. I can do it that way. Or I've learned delayed gratification. I've learned it's okay to make mistakes, and I can keep trying, right? I've learned that, well, you get the message.